I was almost scammed. Hi, I'm Aaron Zapata. Welcome back to the All Things Real Estate Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm here with
Todd Anderson, the other co-host.
That's right. This is the All Things Real Estate Show, and we appreciate you coming back here. We had to do a follow-up to an earlier episode where we talked about all the different kind of scams that are happening right now in our country when it comes to land sales and other sales.
Yeah, we talked about scams, and scams are so prevalent that we had to split it into two episodes. Scams Part 1 and Scams Part 2. This is going to be a trilogy because today we have some real life experience with scams. And this is actually something that happened after we had recorded these episodes. So Aaron, why don't you tell everybody what happened to us?
This is late breaking news. Really, it happened to us just here this week in the time that we're recording this.
It was yesterday.
So I got a call on my cell phone number and left a message saying that they had a vacant property that they needed to sell and needed me to call them back. So I called them back and nobody answered. It was a Google Voice number and I left a message. Now keep in mind, this is here local. This is Southern California. This is right on the border of LA and Orange County. This is in our backyard. It's on a street that I've driven by 100 times, this piece of property that almost fell victim to scam. So here's what happened. I got called. I left him a message. And then everything from that point was text messaging only. So I could never get a hold of them. They texted me. They said they had this lot that they had purchased that they needed to sell, and they wanted a certain amount of money for this property. Now, you and I, Todd, started doing a market analysis like we always do.
Did some research.
Someone calls us, and our job is to get a fair market value for this property. So we pulled up the property. We pulled up the property profile from the title company that allows us to look at the owner. And so, sure enough, the name that was provided to me via this Google Voice number matched the owner's name.
Mm-hmm. So far, so good.
Yeah.
But as we were doing the research on the land, we found that, I don't remember how long ago it was, but he purchased the land not too long
13 years ago.
Oh, it was 13 years ago.
13 years ago. But for the sum of $375,000.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Okay. $375,000. And I think when we were looking at the valuation of the land, the comps put it at about, what was it? In the
$400,000.
Yeah, it was in the $400,000 range.
Yeah, not a lot of price improvement there.
Not a whole lot of price improvement, but one of the telltale signs that this might not be on the up and up was the fact that this person, what did he tell you? He said he'd be willing to sell it for
$270,000.
Now, who in their right mind would spend $375,000 and would be overwhelmingly ready and willing to accept a land purchase of take a $100,000 loss and not even starting higher to see what you could get?
Yeah, so that's kind of what one of the red flags for me as I was going through this process, because we ended up discovering it was a scam and a fraudulent purchase or sale from the events that then transpired.
Yeah.
So I went over to the lot. I walked the lot. I took some pictures. I talked with the neighbor. I then had a few more follow-up questions with the owner. And so I went ahead and continued to text back and forth what I thought was the owner at the time. And I even told him I was going to go pull permits just to double check to make sure that certain things were done on the property. And all of the communication was very affirmative, very much thankfulness. I'm grateful that you're helping us out. And but I recommended that they list the house for hire.
Mm-hmm.
And here was the first thing was it was all through Google Voice.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that when I suggested listing the property higher, the amount that they were willing to take went from $270 down to $200. So it dropped even further. And he's like, well, if I could get $200 to $250, I would be completely satisfied.
Yeah.
So then I started.
Something's wrong with this picture.
Right. So then I started saying, like, well, maybe I'll buy it. Maybe I'll send it to my investors. And what if we could move quickly on this? And I wanted to engage this person because at this point, my mind was like, I think something's up. I think something's wrong. And I decided to do a Google search based on where the property taxes are being mailed to. So obviously it's a vacant piece of land. If I didn't say that already, it's vacant. So nobody lives there. So I have to look at where the property taxes are going. So then I sent this information to the scam, and I said, I'm going to have to mail you some hard copies to your address in the city. I didn't give him the exact address because I kind of was nervous about this person, and this was the next thing that came up. He said, "Well, why you can just email everything to us, and can't we sign everything electronically?"
Yep.
So then I was like, So I decided to Google that address, where the mailing address, where the property taxes go, and a business popped up. So I went to the website, I called the phone number, and I asked for the owner by name. And keep in mind, the fraud guy is using the owner's name.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a different name.
And you had talked with the fraudster.
And I had talked with
once.
the fraudster, and I had his voice recorded on that initial call.
He left a message. I listened to the voicemail with you. Yeah,
Right.
he left a message on your phone. Yep.
And so as I'm calling this guy, they don't, I'm some stranger calling for the owner of this company, and it goes to voicemail, and the voicemail on, the message on the voicemail was a different voice.
Completely different voice. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think these two.
Yeah.
So I left a message for the guy. I'm like, I need to just do some due diligence. I was approached by a person that says they're you, and I just need to double check. Are you selling your property? So like within 20 minutes, he calls back.
Yeah.
And he says, you're the fourth person to call me.
Wow.
About this. So
Hey, before we continue.
Yeah.
I think we're about 6 minutes into this so far. We got to let people know who we are. And who is it that's telling this captivating story about fraud? I mean, this could be a movie. Well, maybe not. But you're listening to the Bald Brothers team at Impact Properties. Our show is all things real estate. And fraud is unfortunately one of the things we have to talk about with real estate. You can call us at 833-305-BALD. That's 833-305-BALD. You can also go to our website at baldbrothers.tv, and there you can get all access to everything you need right there. And if you want to talk to us more, and perhaps you might be questioning if something might be fraudulent, feel free to give us a call. But let's finish this story. So a different voice, we realized this is something that is going to lead towards... it could lead towards disaster.
Yes.
Because he didn't want to send anything to the physical address because the rightful owner would know that something's up. So he didn't want to alert the rightful owner. Wanted to do everything by DocuSign, not to have any contact at all. Now, the question is, how could somebody like this get away with that? And what would the end result be?
So we can talk about that because that's a big question that the owner asked. How can I prevent this from happening again? Like, how can the guy get the money? What's that process look like? And so I was able to give him some advice and walk him through some things that he needs to do specifically to protect himself in this case. But before we get to that, the owner said, how can we stop these guys? And I'm like, that's a good question. So what I did was I sent a document with his permission to the fraudsters. Now, remember, it's a husband. I didn't say this, but it's a husband and wife. And so I had said in the text messages, well, as we move forward, I'll need to send you some documents to sign. I'll need your wife to sign it and you to sign it. So I need your email. I need her email. And so I was able to get 2 different email addresses. I have a Google Voice number. And so with his permission, I sent out a document that they then signed electronically. So when I got back the document saying that they had signed it, when you sign something electronically, and everybody should know this, there is a certificate of authenticity that gets put into the electronic signature. And when we use electronic signatures, we use DocuSign. And so I was able to pull up that certificate, and on that certificate, it gave me the IP address, the internet. What does IP stand for? I have no idea.
Internet protocol.
Internet protocol.
Right? Yeah.
So it's a number. It's an address basically that consists of numbers and periods, and you can then go online and you can do a reverse address search based on the IP address. And so I went online, I looked up the IP address, and coincidentally, both the email addresses were signed from the exact same IP address. on a mobile carrier with an address located in Nigeria.
Of course.
Of course.
Offshore. Most of these tend to be offshore.
And right then I knew it was fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm in communication with the owner. He's fully aware of what's happening. And he asked me, how is it possible that this would have taken place? And so I was able to give him a scenario because these people pretend to be the owner.
Mm-hmm.
They have the name, which they can get usually by Googling an address through public information. They create a fake email address, in this case, a Google Voice number, so they can call anywhere in the world, from anywhere in the world. And then they execute things electronically. They fraudulently notarize and sign a grant deed and have that sent to an unsuspecting escrow company.
Mm-hmm.
And then a title company has to fall for it.
Yep.
They have to basically miss it and then record the deed in the new person's name. A legitimate buyer, I might say,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
who thinks they're buying a legitimate property.
There's two victims here.
Yeah, there are. So the buyer's buying, and then there's actually three. They're buying,
Mm-hmm.
and the money gets wired
Mm-hmm.
to the foreign bank.
That's right.
Money's gone.
That's right.
So now you have a buyer who spent money on a property that they're not ever going to own.
Mm-hmm.
You have a seller who no longer has deed to the property on a property they didn't sell. So who comes into play here?
Mm-hmm.
Title company.
Yep.
But before I give the information about the title company, because I was sharing this story in a group this morning when I was with some CEOs, and one of them is a contractor, and he had also a personal experience that he shared with me that I want to share today.
Okay.
Because it's super important. But I want you to go over to our website at baldbrothers.tv, and I want you to subscribe to our newsletter, because we send out our podcast, we send out updates on properties, we send out helpful information on a weekly basis, and we also, as an added benefit to those who sign up right now, will send you a digital copy of our new book that's coming out called Selling As Is. And so we want to make sure that you get a copy of that as soon as it's hot off the press. We're in the process of doing final edits. I feel like we've been saying that, but we want to make sure it's good.
These are now final edits.
Final. Yeah. And so go there. And also we would like to thank our sponsors for these shows. We've got two of them that particularly really help us out. It's Beacon Escrow as well as Crosswalk Mortgage.
Yep.
So check out our affiliates and our sponsors on our website at baldbrothers.tv. Okay. Where was I?
You were going to share the contractor story.
Okay, yeah. So sharing the story this morning. In fact, the contractor is one of them that I reached out to say, hey, would you like to buy this piece of property?
I remember, yeah.
Okay. Would you like to buy it?
Yeah,
because
before we knew it was a scam,
right.
we were already talking with this contractor.
Right, because, I had no reason to believe it was a scam until, the Google Voice kind of made sense. The voice didn't match. Can I sign everything electronically? I'm going to just take $200,000 when it's worth $4,000. None of that settled right with me, and then it was confirmed when I was talking to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to this other guy about this land because it seemed like too good to be true, and he says, that happened to a customer of mine, and he's a builder contractor, and so he was hired by a gentleman to go into a property and to totally gut it and to clean it out, because the buyer, who was his client, was going to flip and renovate this property. So he's there. He's done all the renovation. He then gets a call from the buyer and says, you need to stop the work. And he's like, what are you talking about? He says, I was scammed. Same thing.
Yeah.
The owner basically was out of country, legitimately out of country, and got a hold of the buyer and said, what are you doing to my property? I own it.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean you own it? So in that case, because it was clearly fraud and there was a title policy, the title company paid for it.
Yep.
Reimbursed the buyer.
Yep.
And restored the title.
Yeah. So there is your third victim.
There's the third victim. It's just the title company.
Title company, yep.
Which is why we have title insurance.
That's the purpose of it.
It is. And it's super important that when you're buying property, especially cash, it is not a requirement. There's no law that says you must buy title policy. It would be foolish to buy a property without a title policy.
Without a title policy. But when it's an all cash transaction, those are the ones that, if anything's going to go without a title policy, it'll be one that's an all cash transaction. It would be foolish to do it without it.
Right.
So wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So just to keep things real, the guy the fraud scammer doesn't know that we know that he's false.
Yeah.
And so I've collected information about his address overseas. I've collected all the stuff, and I'm going to send him a nice little text message that says, it's so interesting that, you live overseas and you're selling this property, and I'm going to send him a picture of his house.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play a little bit of a backwards kind of
so the saga continues,
Yeah,
the story continues.
Because it's not fair to the owner of the lot here in America.
Yeah.
That somebody overseas is getting away
and
with
this
scamming.
Continues to happen because he said he's had a few calls on it
I'm the
now.
fourth person.
You're the fourth person, and it's going to continue. We got to shut this guy down.
That's right. So if you have a property and you're a realtor listening to our show, thank you for doing that, by the way, and your gut is saying something's wrong, it probably is.
Yeah.
Probably is. Do more research. It is our duty as professionals to make sure that we're working with the people that we think we're working with.
Yeah.
And they said that they could notarize the documents down the street, and then they would send us copies of their ID. Of course they would.
Yeah.
And he wants to know if we still have buyers interested, by the way. That's what his text to me today was.
Wow.
Do you still have buyers interested?
Well,
so I'm stringing them along. Doing a little more research so I can have a little better package to turn over to the seller, and he can turn it over to the authorities and report it.
Yeah.
So that's apropos timing.
Yeah, so
we just talked about
We just talked about it. So this is scams. This is a footnote to our scams. This is an appendix, I guess.
I guess so.
Scams part 3. So if you're just tuning in, and we're talking about scams, you can call us. We are the Bald Brothers team with Impact Properties. Our show is all things real estate. And you can call us at 833-305-BALD. That's 833-305-BALD. You can also go to our website at baldbrothers.tv. And as Aaron said earlier, we recommend if you do go to our website, sign up for our newsletter so we can keep you posted on several different things. We got our book that's coming up as well. But hey, there's another thing we wanted to talk about today with the little bit of time that we have left. And somebody in my church sent me an article. And actually, it's an article based off of an LA Times article. What he sent me had a very creative title. It was from Not the Bee. And their title was, listen to this, it's not just a meme anymore. The LA Times wants you to try out pod living, and the pictures are nightmare fuel. I love the verbiage there, but I actually went over the LA Times article, and we'll post that copy of a link to the article in our show notes. But it says the title of the article is "Can't Afford California Housing. Try living in a tiny sleeping pod, all 4 feet of it." And in this story, this is a new thing where people can actually, instead of forget about renting or leasing a single family residence or a condo or even an apartment or even a room in someone's house. In this story, you can actually get a basic pod that's a very cozy 3.5 feet wide by 4 feet tall. It says in this article it's just big enough to fit a twin mattress. And get this, there's some amenities that come with this. These are featured amenities. The feature amenities such as charging stations. I mean, you got to have a charging station in your pod.
Of course.
LED lights.
Of course.
And individual climate control systems. So isn't that nice? Your little pod has a charging station, LED lights, and a climate control system. And guess what these rents are going for? I mean, if you really want, you can get a great price on this. Rents.
But let's don't before you give the rates.
Okay.
We have to say that right now this is a legitimate option in Palo Alto.
Yep.
Which is near San Francisco, and Bakersfield.
Yep.
So these are 2 locations where you can actually do this.
Yes.
It's not just a maybe if. It is an actual, you can go to these cities and you can rent these bunk beds.
Yeah, what they've done is they've converted homes and office spaces into dwelling units. And it says in this article, for dozens of people. So the rents range from $500 to $900 per month.
Per month. Hey,
isn't that amazing?
Well, and here's what the gist of this is, and we kind of say it tongue in cheek because, it seems odd because in our country, in our culture in California, my whole life, I've born and raised here.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen basically bunk beds being offered to the public for rent for $500 to $900 a month. Apartments, other housing units, whatever it may be. It just seems like absurd to me that this is what's happening. But this is our reality, that this is what they're offering. And at $500 to $900 per month, you have a place to sleep, place to charge your phone, and you can cool down during the day or at night, right?
Yep.
The reality is this. A recent report came out by the National Association of Realtors, and I just saw this on Twitter yesterday, and it said that mortgage affordability is at its lowest point in history. Meaning that as long as they've been keeping track of the numbers, that they don't have an affordability factor that's as low as it is today. Because home prices are high and interest rates are high, which means if you're buying a house today, you're signing up for a mortgage payment anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that affordability factor is so slim that these, for some, will become the only viable alternative.
Only workable option. And hey, if you have no choices, and we are kind of poking fun at it, but hey, if you've got no choices and this is what you're left with, this is what you have to do.
Yeah. So we don't want to downplay the fact that there are needs for people to have affordable housing. We do want to show you, though, that the ideas that they're coming up with are historically absurd because it just seems like, really? Someone's renting a bunk bed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to the article, LA Times, they're renting a bunk bed.
Yeah.
With a curtain on the end.
And don't forget, it actually says in the article that you also get a storage locker.
Oh, storage locker. Okay. Yeah. And they're calling it the pod.
Yeah.
A tiny sleeping space with shared buildings is the whole idea. And, in California right now, there is a big push, and this isn't the whole topic of our show, but the Housing Authority in California is making a big push to increase the density level. And in fact, if you have been paying attention at all to your local city officials, every single city in California is fighting to postpone, delay, or move this requirement that the Housing Authority is pushing down from Sacramento to the cities on how many additional units that they need to build in their town. I live in Yorba Linda. It's been a big fight for over a year trying to figure out where these housing units are going to go and who has to put them up, who has to put up with them, and nobody wants them.
Yeah.
Now, other cities have more vacant land where they can convert, and so I know some cities are going to welcome this because it helps meet that housing requirement, which, again, to me is a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm not in these cities that are dealing with these super high level of units that they have to create in order to meet the California housing demand.
Yeah.
So, and I shouldn't say the housing demand because the total population in California is actually like getting smaller, but we're being required to build more and more units from the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
So,
well, we work with primarily sellers. We do work with buyers as well. And by the way, if you are a seller or a buyer, you want to call us, 833-305-BALD. You can also go to baldbrothers.tv. But hey, if you own a property, one of the big things, of course, is auxiliary dwelling units, ADUs. Sometimes people will rent out one of their own rooms in their house. But hey, maybe you want to talk to us about renting out some bunk beds.
We don't know. We'll have a fun conversation.
Give us a
that's
call.
For sure.
We'll at least talk to you about it.
That's right. And there's an important disclaimer here at the end. But I'd like to thank our sponsors and head over to our website, baldbrothers.tv, and give us a call. We don't answer it personally. Our call service will answer it 24 hours a day at 833-305-BALD. That's 833-305-BALD. Well, we've had an exciting month here full of a lot of offers and a lot of properties that we've listed and now in escrow. So if you're definitely looking to sell, now's the time to do it. Give us a call. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the All Things Real Estate Show. The Bald Brothers team is a licensed DBA of Impact Properties, Inc., licensed by the California Department of Real Estate number 01922-671. Again, we do not give any real estate, legal, or financial advice, and we do encourage you to seek the advice of the proper professionals. If you'd like to reach us, you can call us at 833-305-BALD, or you can reach us online at baldbrothers.tv. Equal housing opportunity.